Hello, and welcome back to Reenacting for the long-awaited Litzen sewing tutorial. Now, as you see in front of me, I have a brand new DAC first pattern tropical tunic that is currently insignialess. No breast eagle, no Litzen. And I've got a pair of tropical Litzen here in front of me. And today I'm going to be showing you how to fold and sew a pair of Litzen. I know a lot of people have requested this one in the past because, yeah, I get it. How do you take this unholy abomination of a thing and turn it into one of these nice little things that you sew onto your collar? But today I'm going to show you how to do that. So first off, you see here I've got my pair of tropical Litzen with the nice little copper stripes going down the center here on the silver, kind of dark silvery gray backing. First things first, you can see, if I flip it over, we've got all these long little wiry threads on the end from where the middle parts were woven, and then you have these two little pieces coming off of the side that are also just the little threads. They're not woven, and they kind of come off to a little angle here at the edge. So, got our Litzen here. I've got my trusty basting tape, I've got a pair of scissors and a ruler, and this is practically about what you're going to need to be able to fold and sew these, other than a lot of time and some patience. So, with this other one that I have here, you can see that I've kind of already got it folded up into the shape that you want when compared to a fully folded pair. Got the angle there, and then the little angles on the side. So we'll take the other end and kind of demonstrate what I'm doing to get it to look like that. First off, you flip it around again, and obviously you have all these annoying little strands that are all flitting about. First thing you can do is cut these. Don't cut them right where they emerge, because then otherwise you have the chance of starting to unravel the Litzen themselves on the other side, and it'll start to come undone. But take your scissors and bring them up probably like a good, I don't know, 1/16, 1/8 of an inch up from where they start, and just give them a good little snip, because otherwise they're obnoxious, they get in the way. And when you're trying to fold stuff, they have a tendency to just like try to stick out the sides, and it makes it very annoying. So, again, I'm doing these piece by piece, since each little individual column, stripe, if you will, come out at different lengths, so I want to kind of cut them all where they come out instead of doing them all at once. So then I'm going to grab the middle section here. And grab all the little threads in one little pile. Oh, missing one still. There we go. And come in and give them all a nice little snip. So now, there we go. This is much easier and nicer to work with. And then the other thing that you can see from this half-folded pair as opposed to this one is that these middle pieces I've actually cut. And this you're going to want to do. You can do that next. As you take it about halfway and snip it on either side, like I've done on this one, because this is how you're going to create your nice little angles on either side, like here and here. So if you flip it over, now you can see that you have these little loose ends. And what you're going to do is fold them in towards the center, like so. And I'm just going to use my fingers here for a moment. You will want to put a little piece of tape or glue or whatever else you're using to hold it there, to hold these permanently in a moment. But first off, put them in the center and gently give them a little bit of a pull so that they start pulling on the sides. And you can use your fingers to kind of encourage it to start pulling in on itself back there on either side. like so. And then if you flip it over, you see we've started to get our little angles here on either side, which is what we want. But then the next step to get this piece all folded up is you're going to want to take it, and then you notice the two smaller stripes on either side. They're at varying heights, and they don't match with each other vertically. And you're going to want to take the angle there, and this is where I find the ruler to be helpful. Take the angle from your ruler, then bring it up to about the edge point of the middle one, where it comes to a point right about there. Or if I go from the other side, right about here. And then you take this, all the rest of this, and you fold it back on itself from that point, like I've done on the other side here. And something you can do to help you with all these folds so that they actually stay where you want them is take your Litzen and take a hot iron, take a little bit of water on your fingers and just kind of dab it on the edge of that crease, and then iron that very gently. Don't press super hard to make it permanent and very hard to get out in case you end up putting it at just a little bit of an angle that you don't want. And that will help to hold that crease in place. So, once I've folded this, I'm going to want to double check my angle and see it's a little bit off. And now a lot of this is going to be trial and error. You're just going to keep checking and double checking. You have a picture of a finished pair next to you or something like that to help you out. So once you do that, as you can see, my little pieces are already coming undone because I'm just holding them. But you take that, now you've got your nice little angle, but now you have this little flap that's sticking off the back. It's like, okay, that's not supposed to be there. So what you're going to want to do, you unfold this a little bit, and then you crease that over back onto itself. So that way, when you fold it up, voila, now it doesn't poke out. So if I flip this over to the other side and undo the folding here, you can kind of see I'm folding this edge in. Again, you'll have these little strands in. And then I fold it back over onto itself, like so. And as you can see, at a better angle from this side here. So with this side, if I actually undo this for a second, I have a little piece of basting tape here that's holding my strings in place. And then I've got this folded in on itself, and then it comes in for the crease like that. And that's how I get those nice little lines. So that's what you want it to look like in the end. Your longer little column here should have a longer little angle, and then the shorter one should have a little short angle that matches your angle here that is parallel to the edges, like so. So that's what you want it to look like on both sides. And then obviously you get to do it all over again, yay, with another pair. Same thing, cut all the annoying little ends, snip the sides. Careful not to snip any of these inner parts, you want to leave those intact. And then you start folding it all back up again, same thing as before. And something to note here while I'm doing this, because I will actually fold these all off camera and then you'll be able to see, I'll go back on camera at various stages in the middle so you can kind of see in more detail as I'm folding them up. But another thing to be mindful of is that if your insignia, your Litzen, are not looking like this the first time coming through with these nice little angles on either side, crisp little lines and folds and all that, don't sweat it. If you go and look at pictures of original tunics, and especially like collector's tunics, you'll see that a lot of them actually have Litzen that are very poorly folded and sewn on in place. You'll see ones that have a good extra bit sticking up here from the edge of where the column should be instead of right at that point. You'll see ones that have really terrible little angles here and all sorts of other stuff. Actually, at this point, I will put on the screen a couple of these examples that I'm talking about. And the whole point here is just, if you're sewing this for your first time and you're folding it and you're getting frustrated because it's not turning out exactly how you want, it's not looking super perfect, don't sweat it. It's actually completely fine if your angles are not absolutely perfect and you've got, you know, a little piece here or there that looks like, oh, I could have folded it a little bit better and made it perfect. It's like, no, actually, the people 80 years ago when they were folding these in the factories, they were human too. They made mistakes. They were lazy. They were sloppy. They've, you know, stitched them on all weird or whatever. So don't sweat it that much if your pair come out not looking exactly perfect. Anyhow, now at this point, I'll take this Litzen here that I have and fold it on itself off camera and go grab my iron and iron some of these little angles so that they're much easier to fold and they don't just come undone immediately, and then show you what we're dealing with here. Alright. Alright, now as you can see here, I've fully folded up our first Litzen. I've got all 4 edges totally folded in. There's what the back looks like. You can see I've got the 2 little strips of tape here on either side. So now I'm going to go ahead and fold the next one and get it matching. Again, same exact process as before. And I will actually move the camera over here so that you can see in detail exactly what I'm talking about. So here's it in close detail. You can see that the fold on the edge here just about lines up with the angle right there. And then again with the other side, same kind of thing. So this just is a nice close perspective of it. And you can see it in great detail. Alright, now I'm going to go fold up the other one. Okay, and now you can see I've got my sewing machine all set up here. Both of my Litzen have been folded, and I've applied them both to the collar with a little bit of basting tape. And I'm about ready to sew them, but there are actually a couple different ways that you can sew Litzen. And the one I'll be going off of today for this DAC tunic is one of the more difficult and time-consuming ways to sew them. But basically, you sew a straight stitch down either side of the columns here. And then on the edges, you actually hand stitch and tack these down on either side. And of course, repeat it again over here. So that's the method I'll be using since this is a early DAC tunic, a M40 pattern. This was the type of sewing most commonly seen and prevalent on those. And actually on the topic here, while I'm at it, with this DAC Eagle, which I'll also be sewing on here, but since it's not part of the Litzen video, I just figured I'd mention it here though. When you're sewing it on to the DAC tunic in particular, because you're actually supposed to overlap the wreath on the pocket edge here, which you don't do on any other German tunic, the eagle, how you sew it on there is actually one of the most difficult ways to sew the eagle on any tunic. And by that, you see I've got all these edges folded here except for the top edge. That's because you actually take the pocket, you flip it upside down with this unfinished edge here. You flip it up and you sew that edge down, and then you fold the eagle so that that top stitch is actually hidden. And then, once you've done that, you sew a straight stitch down the sides of the wings here on either side. And lastly, when you sew the wreath, since it's sewn onto the pocket itself, you actually have to hand tack that on there. So, just something of note for sewing the insignia on the DAC tunic, specifically the eagle. But otherwise, back to the Litzen. So I had said that there were multiple different ways that you can sew Litzen. I'll actually put up a picture of a chart right now, and I will link this down in the description as well. This is a guide that goes over the various ways to sew the different types of Litzen, because actually throughout, as the war went on, the variations on how you sewed your Litzen actually ended up changing. So that's something else relevant to consider, is that an early war tunic is going to have insignia that is sewed on more painstakingly and with more hand stitching than, say, like a M44 jacket is sewn, because the Litzen is simplified by that point in how they sew it on. So again, I will link that down in the description of the video, and otherwise you can see here. One last thing to consider with the Litzen is you want to kind of line them up equal. Let me grab my ruler here. You want to line them up with the same exact distance of either edge of the corner of your lapel, the corner of your collar, and then basically have them centered, going along, running parallel to the edge of the collar, as I've done here. So again, I'm going to sew either side with a straight stitch on the machine going down, and then I'm going to hand tack all the edges. So I will do that right now, and then you'll see the completed product at the end. Now here you can see the completed product. I've sewed on both of the Litzen. If we take a look at them closer, you can see I've got the straight machine stitching on either side here, and then I have hand stitched either of the corners. If we flip this over, you can see that a little more apparent. Straight machine stitching and then hand tacking on either end. So, as I said before, this method of applying the Litzen is suitable for early war tunics, so that is M36 and M40 tunics, as well as for tropical Deutsches Afrikakorps tunics. I will post that guide in the description of the video that demonstrates all the different ways to sew on your Litzen for all stages of the war and the variations, so be sure to check that out, especially if you have a later war model. On a side note real quick here about the tropical breast eagle, you can see that I have sewn it on, and like I had mentioned before, here's the completed work. The top edge got a hidden stitch here that's been folded back onto itself, and then I've machine stitched the sides right here, and then the wreath that goes over the pocket flap has been hand done. And if I flip the pocket flap over, you can see where the thread comes through. It simply passes through the edge of the pocket flap here, then goes on the flap, then goes back onto the tunic itself to be tied off. So just a quick little note for anyone that's interested about sewing the DAC breast eagle. But otherwise, I hope this video was everything that you guys have been wanting, that it was informative and clear on how to sew and fold your Litzen, because I know those guys can be a little pain. Otherwise, if you enjoyed, please like, share, subscribe. And on a quick note here, I recently started up a Patreon account, so if any of you guys would be interested in going over and checking that out, I'll have the link in the description. If you are so obliged to support me, I would greatly appreciate it. But otherwise, I shall see you all in the next one.